participating in this forum to learn more about the candidates and their ideas and positions on the future of Framingham. On behalf of the Economic Development and Public Policy Committee of the Metro West Chamber of Commerce, welcome. First, thank you to our gracious host, Hens Steakhouse, a chamber member and longtime institution in the Framingham business community. Thank you to our sponsors, the Metro West Daily News, Framingham State University, and my law firm, Bowditch & Dewey. And to the candidates, we thank each of you for your eagerness to serve Framingham. We wish you the very best of luck. The predecessor organization to the Metro West Chamber of Commerce was the Framingham Board of Trade, which was founded in 1895. Today, regional membership in this organization includes companies and businesses from more than 23 communities, with about 40% of those companies based in Framingham. My own family arrived in this community in the 1830s, 2 generations before the Framingham Board of Trade was launched. I don't know for certain that my ancestors were among the founders of the initial board, although I like to imagine that they were. But I do know that the businesses in which they worked have been served by the Chamber for generations, including small businesses that they created as laborers, builders, insurance agents, attorneys, as well as employees of the Denison. My great-grandfather, a Framingham stonemason and a small business owner, was active in the first pro-city movement in 1911. It's fun to think of him this morning, along with my late grandparents and my dad, at a forum on the eve of this historic election. My mom is eagerly awaiting coverage from her retirement perch on the Cape. You candidates honor the hopes and dreams from our past and for our future. I want to thank the members of the Economic Development and Public Policy Committee of the Chamber who helped plan this event, some of whom are here this morning, including Javier Ceballos, Framingham State, and Peter Chisholm, also of Framingham State University, Peter Barbieri of Fletcher Tilton, Steve Roach of the Victory Group, David Podell of Mass Bay Community College, Sean Kimball of MathWorks, Dave Bennett of Middlesex Savings Bank, and of course Paul Joseph, CEO of the Chamber. Paul may be from Natick, the town that could soon.
I thought it wasn't going to be a roast format. We've heard of it. We forget it.
The town that could soon be known as a suburb of the city of Framingham. But Paul is a stalwart champion for every community in the region. I will hand things off to Paul now to welcome you and to lay out the rules for today's forum. And he will ask each of the moderators to introduce themselves before we begin.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all. And honestly, Kathy did not mention she is also our chair-elect going into the 2018 year. Our annual meeting will be next week at the Framingham Sheraton Conference Center. It's great to see everyone here this morning. We really appreciate the opportunity to host what will turn out to be, I think, the final full forum for the mayoral candidates and the at-large councilor candidates here in Framingham. As a recovering selectman, as some of you are in the room, or someone who's still serving, I'm a big fan of charter commissions, especially as I look at town meeting tonight when I go back home. So I think Framingham is certainly moving in the right direction and couldn't be happier to see the energy and the passion that the candidates have brought to this discussion. The community has gotten involved. And as somebody who will be celebrating 10 years of civic volunteerism at the end of this month, when I was first pulled into it at the threat of closing my children's elementary school, we're all in this for different reasons, but we're all in this together. I think one of the best opportunities we have here today is to learn a little bit more. We've been hearing from the candidates throughout with great coverage from our media partners. Sue Petroni is here from the Framingham Source, and Brendan will be up in a moment from the Metro West Daily News, and of course our moderators, Shanley Reardon here from Framingham State University's Gatepost publication as well. So locally, there's been plenty of opportunities to hear from the candidates, to read about their positions on things. You cannot beat the level of civic engagement that comes with a monumental decision like this. So thank you for everyone who's been actively listening and actively participating. With that, I'd like to welcome up Shanley Reardon just to say a couple of words. I wanted to introduce all of the moderators that we have today. We'll come back to the format and then we'll get things started. So Shanley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shanley. I'm a senior at Framingham State in the Communication Arts program. I'm also a news editor at our independent student newspaper, the Gatepost. I just wanted to thank Paul and the Chamber and FSU for this opportunity and for the candidates for their continued public engagement for the campaign.
Also worked as an intern for Framingham Downtown Renaissance over the summer, which really brought her into the issues surrounding small business in particular. Next, I'd like to introduce Ann Brennan, who's the editor of the Metro Daily News, among many publications of Gatehouse Media, to say a few words. So, Ann.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, and welcome everybody. As you know, I am the editor of the Metro West Daily News, and I got this job started in December. So I came right at a very interesting time for Framingham. It's been quite a journey meeting all the candidates, hearing what they had to say, and I just have to say how impressed I am with the people who are running. I think regardless of who wins, the city's going to be in good hands. I just have to put a plug in though for some excellent work that Jim Haddadine, our reporter's been involved with. We've been doing a Making a City series. We've done profiles on the candidates in writing. We've had podcast discussions. We've also had video of the interviews. So if you need to catch up, please visit our website, look for Making a City, and lots to catch up on. And also we have features on all the different districts. The other thing I have to put a plug in for is we're also working with the, the other chamber in the area, 495 Partnership, and Fresno, can you tell I'm from California? Framingham State on a business survey. Tomorrow's the last day. I hope everybody, if you haven't taken the survey, if you could go to the 495 Partnership website and take that survey. They're going to be releasing kind of the snapshot of what's going on now. It's the employer survey, excuse me. And also throughout the next year, give a forecast and kind of take a deeper look at what's going on in the economy around here. So if you could do that, it would really be great to get as much participation as possible. And thank you very much.
And the survey I mentioned is also through the Tuesday at 2. We're promoting it through the Chamber, that the collaboration of the 495 Partnership actually is a regional economic development organization that we are collaborating with. So by all means, if you can participate in that survey, it helps inform policymakers when we go back to legislation. So with that, I'd like to introduce the format for today. We're going to start, obviously we got a little bit of a late start. I think there was a traffic issue this morning. What a shocker. Maybe we'll have a question or two about transportation this morning. But wanted to just also welcome and thank Tina Martin from WGBH Boston, who will be our moderator for the mayoral portion of the program this morning. For the mayoral discussion, we've basically provided all of the candidates across both panels with the same set of questions. So they had an advanced list of what was available from among which the moderators will choose the questions this morning. Given the limited time for each panel, we've asked them for the mayoral candidates to please keep remarks to not longer than 3 minutes. I will be sitting there with a timer and keeping track of the time, so we'll leave it to our moderators to manage those conversations. But we want to get in as many issues as possible, so we ask that you please keep it to the time limit that we've imposed. And secondly, the format for today is not a debate per se, but it's really more of a discussion. So we're giving every candidate an opportunity to answer directly to the questions without a response necessarily. So every question will be asked of equal candidates. So every mayor candidate will have the same question. Every councilor candidate among the 4 will have the same. The mix between the 2 separate panels might be a little different, but they're all basically have been provided in advance. So with that, I'd like to welcome to the podium Tina Martin from WGBH, and I would also like to welcome our mayoral candidates, Mr. John Stefanini and John Spicer.
Good morning. I like to see that. I like the handshake. Very good. Good morning. I don't think I got a response from you. Good morning. All right. I know we're awake. It's early, but we're all awake. I'll give you a couple of minutes to get your water, and then we'll start. How's everybody doing today? Good? All right. You ready? Candidates? Okay. All right, our first question is, what will you do on day one to strengthen the city of Framingham's economic climate? We'll start with candidate Stephanie. And the key word is do.
The city, good morning.
Button on the left.
It's turning on, hold on.
Okay.
Test. Good morning. So, what do we do to improve economic development? What do we do? The first thing we do is, at day one, becoming a city will provide focus and clarity to our economic development agenda. Just look at what Marlborough and Mayor Bejan has been able to do in terms of competing and working with regional and state and national leaders. What I will do is I will convene business leaders, folks that I've worked with and know and have partnered with for a very long time. I'll reach out to people I've worked with in the state who are part of the economic development conversation. Over the past 30 years, I've spent about half of my adult life in and around state and local government and leadership roles around economic development, and I've spent the last half in the private sector working with folks doing exactly the same thing. That's put me in contact with the decision makers. So the Secretary of Economic Development, Jay Ash, was someone who mentored me as a state rep when he was the chief of staff to the majority leader. And I've worked with him in economic development roles in the decades that have followed and as secretary. We'll work with those folks, we'll bring him to Framingham, we'll bring the governor back to Framingham to talk about economic development in our community and the priorities we have, which include locating Mass Bay Community College in a permanent home in our downtown, and working with Framingham State College on workforce development issues. Reaching out and working with our partners to make sure that our workforce has housing and recreational opportunities so that our young workforce has a reason to stay here and not migrate into Boston or elsewhere. I'll work with our small business community, and it is more than one community, it is multiple communities, and we need to be open and accessible to each and every one of those communities to work through the issues. Our small business community in particular has significant issues with regulation, be they signs or permitting or development, that have been ignored or not been of concern to our government in Framingham today. We tend to look at decisions around business in terms of our Route 9 perspective, which we've been very successful with. But at the same time, we have small businesses in our community, in our small business
I think
centers.
that's your time, candidate.
No, that's picking up feedback.
He's talking about the
We're
microphone.
getting some feedback, okay.
Is it better if we hold it farther away? Okay.
Should we just use one mic?
I'm wondering if it's.
Yeah, let's
your mic like that.
just do that. Here you go. You just take my mic and
I shut that one off.
we're just gonna share it, we'll pass it around. That's okay.
Okay. One thing we won't do in economic development is we won't be disjointed and we won't have a problem being heard. Our microphone will work. And I will make sure of that because of the years of experience I have and because of my knowledge of the area and because of the players involved. So we need to treat each of our economic centers, each of our job creators, but we need to treat our commercial residents that provide millions of dollars for our schools, our police, our fire with respect, and we need to work with them to fill our vacant shopping centers, as have all the communities around us. Thank you.
Candidate Spicer, same question.
Well, first and foremost, I make sure our membership, Framingham City's membership is up to date with Metro West Chamber of Commerce. That would be one of the first orders of business. And when I think about how to look at our climate, our economic climate in our community, we're gonna have to change the message here in Framingham, that we're not the difficult place to do business in. We hit the reset button on day one. We hit the reset button to say, yes, we're open for business, yes, we're welcoming, and yes, we want to make sure that Framingham is thriving. As a former person that actually ran my own real estate business, where I worked for a company and I actually sold real estate for over 10 years, a very successful real estate business that I worked for a couple of different companies, and one of the things that I learned from doing that it's my responsibility to make sure that my business is growing. And I also had the help and the support of a wonderful company. I worked for ERA John Nelson for a number of years. And so that was my early foray into business when I was in my 20s. And as a result of that, I went on to expand my own personal business where I bought a condo and I went and parlayed that into some other real estate. So I understand small business. I understand what it's like to be able to, figure out ways in which you're going to grow your customer base. What are those strategies you need to do that? And also, how do you advertise for your business? One of the things that I've done as I've been campaigning for this office is actually meeting with small business owners, whether you're downtown, stopping in, asking the critical questions. What's important to you? What do you need from a mayor? What do you need in our community? And that has been extremely helpful. And a lot of the comments is about the process of starting a business. It's about the signage, big issue around signage in this community. And also understanding how to get support for various things, and even the access to entities like the Metro West Chamber has been challenging. I see greater opportunity across the board. I will also bring to this job my experience at the Museum of Science. We have a number of partners, business partners, and some of them are in this room right now. And I'm happy to say that through those kinds of partnerships, that collaboration, that conversation, that we're able to move forward. And that's one of the things that I feel very proud of, is the vast experience I've had on both sides of running my own business, but working for an entity like the Museum of Science that works closely with other businesses throughout the country.
So our next question is a little bit about what you just kind of alluded to, working with smaller businesses versus larger, because those smaller mom and pops don't maybe have the same concerns of both. So we'll start with you, Candidate Spicer. How would you balance working with large companies and smaller, and how do you see your administration being able to help both?
Well, first and foremost, the needs are very different, and the expectations in working in a community may be different. But at the end of the day, it's about having your product or service being able to be available to the community, and also how do you grow your business, and last but not least, how to keep your taxes down. So everybody has those basic concerns, but the strategies may be very different. I would certainly make sure that as mayor, we're forming opportunities for businesses to have ongoing dialogue with me. So I would ensure that we have those kinds of conversations. The other thing that I look at is that through the city government, how are we working collectively with our economic development department? Because they have started some amazing work in the community and helping thrive, especially downtown Framingham. So I'm pretty proud of the work that some of the leadership has already done in Framingham. So I would be looking for ways to help grow that and grow that department in a way that there's collaboration between multiple groups such as the planning department, the zoning department, economic development, and ensuring that everyone is working together, because that seems to be the greatest criticism of us, is the efficiency of our government. And I think becoming a city, that is one thing that we have to work on very closely. How do we become more efficient and be more forward-facing to our customers, which are the public? And one of the things that I certainly see is important is ensuring that documents and also processes are in multiple languages, because that's the other thing. That's a hindrance for particularly our businesses downtown. Being transparent, making sure that people understand the process, not only having it available, but also having ongoing workshops and seminars that help people start their business, grow their business, and continue to thrive in Framingham.
Thank you. Candidate Stefanini, same question.
It all starts with respect. It starts with treating our small businesses with respect, not shunning them, not declining invitations to meet with them, not making political contributions from them, political fodder to play favors. We need to work with everyone. That means everyone. That means we need to know and understand and work with people. The sign bylaw, we've got to dig into it and recognize that we've taken a lot of small businesses and forced them to change signs that have been up for 20 years. We have pubs that have to choose between 30 days of a sandwich board and a marathon and, sign and whether or not they put a pub up. We have people who make decisions. The building we're in the Hannas and the Shays, and other families in our community, decisions by small business owners are made by individuals, and you need to look them in the eye and they need to feel confidence in their government. Our site plan review that kicks in at 3,000 square feet when someone makes a renovation for a small business can cost a small business owner 4 months and $40,000 to do a simple addition to a small project when staff could do that. We need to look at the way in which we work with them on financing and local development. There are a lot of things that we need to do as a community to work with small businesses, but the first thing we need to do is we need to respect them and work with them and recognize that each area is different. The small businesses in downtown Framingham have very different concerns and issues than our 3 vacant shopping plazas and what we need to do to fill those places. And we need to dig into the specifics of the detail. Consider for a second, I drafted and worked on creating the EDIC legislation and Framingham. Marlboro did something similar. Marlboro has taken theirs and has utilized it in ways in which we do not use ours in Framingham because our local government has been unable to resolve this conflict. If you look at Ashland, Natick, Hudson, Marlboro, Waltham, when you ask them how they fill their downtowns and their plazas and we haven't been able to, their first answer is they work with their small businesses. You folks do not. So we need to stop talking about meeting with people, stop talking about working with people, and actually meet with them, actually work with them. That's how we're going to get through and work with people one-on-one and get something done. And I'll give you a simple, quick story. A woman who saved up a bunch of money, worked as a hairdresser for a bunch of years, put her personal money in, took out a mortgage, opened a local hairdresser, only to be told that she can't put signs in her window because they're over 10%, and led by a former chair of the planning board who has been going around telling people, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, guess what? That's how she gets her customers. It's her money, and it's our community.
Candidate Stefanini, you talked about small businesses, but what about the balance between larger businesses who may not necessarily need that one-on-one FaceTime that you're talking about? How do you create an administration who is able to give everyone the attention and the support they need across the board?
So that's a good question. And you have to treat different constituencies differently. And so we can't package everyone as a small business or you're a business so you are exactly the same. So for example, the Chamber I think does great work, but it has 23 communities, represents the region, and has a lot of different competing agendas. In Boston, there are 5 different business groups. Many businesses belong to all of them because each one of them brings a different thing to the table. So sign bylaw review, revision on regulations and permitting process have been the focus of some other groups. The Chamber has done a great job with the 495 partnership and other groups of bringing a regional focus. So they need to look at workforce development, and you need to work with Mass Bay and Framingham State College. We need to look at applying for grants and making sure Keith Vocational School is doing its share of workforce development as well. I would have the pleasure in one of the highest policy setting roles in our state to draft several economic stimulus bills, including spurring economic innovation and the creation of the John Adams Institute and the like. I know those players and those people, we need to engage them to fill our offices. We need to be thinking about what's going on with staples in the global marketplace and whether that space is going to become vacant and available. You know, when the CEO or leader of Staples comes to town meeting, and town meeting says, we don't want you to speak, we have to stand up and say, you know what? We have to make sure that our commercial residents that are spending millions of dollars contributing to our services. When we needed to open another school when I was a selectman, and people were talking about the academic piece of it, I was working with our permitting agencies to fill the 990 site with Staples and others to generate the millions of dollars necessary for our services. We need to stand up and provide leadership to our community to say it's not okay to vilify these businesses. We have to work together with them. And you know what? Maintaining and preserving open space and developing and growing our commercial tax base are not mutually exclusive. And residents, when they see and hear the facts and they get beyond the rhetoric, they get that. They get that their tax bills are going up because the commercial value in our community is declining. So yes, it's a different way to deal with it. But I met with the CEO, the execs at Staples recently to talk about their 3,100 employees. They want to know that we have more offerings, culinary and recreation and housing for their employees. What are they going to do to keep those people here? We need to look at the fact that strategies for employment, they don't want us to talk the talk. They don't want us to be their business partner. They want us to be their municipal partner, which means we need to be experts in how to deal with financing, grants, water and sewer, permits, taxes, workforce development. I'm prepared to do that because I've done that for 30 years, inside and outside government. Thank you.
Candidate Spicer, do you want to respond to the, just creating a specific balance between between larger commercial and smaller mom and pops type businesses? Because I did ask candidate Stefanini that specific question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And when I think about larger businesses, one of the things in my current role at the Museum of Science, a number of our trustees and also business partners are larger companies, such as working with Genzyme Sanofi and also Bose. They are big partners, and one of the things that we have learned, it's about the conversation, it's about moving the needle forward. And just to give you an example of a recent partnership that we have, and that's with MathWorks, which is working very closely with us in order to deliver services that not only impact underrepresented communities, but also further their mission in making sure that mathematics is also a focal point of school. So those are the kinds of ways that I look at working with our bigger businesses, is how do we expand that pipeline? Years ago, I worked very closely with the Mass Business Roundtable. We convened a summit of businesses throughout the state at the Museum of Science to look at the ways in which businesses have traditionally looked at their pipeline at the colleges and universities, but we started that pipeline thinking about it beforehand, thinking about it in K through 12 education. How do you build that capacity for students coming through the ranks and those partnerships with 2-year and 4-year institutions and articulating into programs? That became critically important, and they were a driver. The business community was a driver for STEM education in this state, which subsequently moved on to expanding those kinds of partnerships. I look at the potential for our business partners that we have with the larger corporation, and I'll just use Bose as an example. Bose is an example of excellence in terms of sound and understanding why kids learn science. Also looking for those opportunities for our children to have partnerships, to work in internships. And the flip side of that, our teachers to have externships in these companies, because teachers need to know what our kids are expecting to do when they get into the world of work. So those kinds of collaborations are critically important. And when I start to think about incubation of new businesses, that's what I think our larger businesses often are trying to do. How do they continue what they do really well, but look for those opportunities, those sweet spots to grow what they do? And that's where I think about the relationship with places like Framingham State and incubator businesses. Those are the kinds of things that I would like to see happen on a much more consistent basis, and those opportunities for our children to continue to articulate from K-12 to higher ed and beyond.
All right, we're going to get back to education in a second, but let's talk about taxes. Some people say, not me of course, that Framingham's commercial residential tax rate is too high. What are you going to do, we'll start with you, candidate Stefanini, to reduce the tax burden on businesses and residents here in the city?
So when we're talking about businesses or residents, Framingham has the 3rd highest unified tax rate in the state. Last year we became dangerously close within a few years of hitting our levy ceiling. That's not a good thing for a community. The key and the solution to this, to dealing with our underperforming schools, all relates to our ability to grow our commercial tax rate, tax value. So I want everybody to think about this for a second. Natick and Framingham have very similar portfolios in real estate. Natick over the last decade has seen a 28% increase in its commercial value, and Framingham has seen a 3% decline. So that's cost every residential taxpayer hundreds and hundreds of dollars in real dollars, and it's cost our businesses value. We need to grow our commercial value. So when you drive by a vacant shopping plaza, you should not only see blight, not servicing a neighborhood, you should also take a $20 bill out of your pocket and throw it out the window, because that's where it's going. So we want to control our residential taxes. The first thing we need to do, and commercial taxes, we need to grow our local economy the way other communities around us have. And we do that by collaborating with people, by recognizing that the decision makers locally are not some non-recourse loan with a far-off bank. They're local business owners. They're local people. And that becomes critical to that. Second, we need to do a top-to-bottom review of our government. We need to be critical. We need to be looking at our expenditures and how we spend them. Commuters ask me every day, why is it our downtown common that was renovated 10 years ago is with new bricks and new trees, has newer bricks and newer trees, and we're spending lots of money on it? I don't know the answer. What I do know is we as a community can do better. So that's number one on the list. Number two, I think we need to look at, relative to our commercial value, we need to look at strategies that grow our commercial tax base and encourage our local businesses and our larger businesses to invest here. Whether that's looking at tax increment financing, whether that's looking at state grants, we need to have an honest conversation that the relationship between commercial growth in a community and residential values matters. That one impacts the other. And we have to stop pitting one against the other and have an honest conversation about how they're interdependent to each other and how it makes a difference. So I'm going to do the things that matter. We're going to grow our commercial value, we're going to take and look at our expenditures and our controls, and we're going to work with people and collaborate to what's in the best interest of our community.
Candidate Spicer?
Taxes, taxes. We've heard that a lot during these debates and also forums. And one of the things that, as Mr. Stefanini alluded to, taxes are a direct result of looking at our market value. So clearly we have to look at how do we grow business? How do we grow our economy? And from a lens that makes good sense for this community, smart growth for this community. And when I think about our taxes, I think about we need a policy. We don't have in Framingham a tax policy. We need to be focused on that. How do we develop that? Because we have four things that we need to be concerned with. Affordability. If you can't afford your taxes, then it makes it very difficult for you to grow your business. Same thing with residential. We have to make it affordable. And also I think about our residents here who lived in Framingham. How do we make sure we're staying on the pulse of that? Also, stability. Yes, a few years ago we had some volatility in our taxes that went up several $100s in 1 year. And so that's the other part of transparency, making sure people understand how their tax bill is calculated and they have an opportunity to kind of evaluate it. Are there ways that we are doing that as collectively as a community? And sustainability, how do we sustain our taxes in our community? How do we keep it at a moderate level? And last but not least, fairness. Is it fair that our commercial businesses pay more versus our residential? And we've heard about that. So we need to be having those conversations because we also need to make sure that we're getting what we need in this community, but we're also making sure that we're growing our business in a way that it's smart. I think one of the key components of that is really coming back to our business leaders, thinking about ways to expand. I'm going to be looking, as mayor, I'm going to be looking for ways to bring new businesses to Framingham, that we are having those innovative, smart ideas that are incubating in this community. That is going to make a significant difference in how we look at our taxes. I also think when we evaluate our taxes, we have to look at what we're getting for our value. What do we get in for our tax dollars in Framingham? And really look at that. And I do agree that there may be some opportunities for us to reduce taxes in a way that allows us to evaluate how we're spending our money, because that's everything. Just like we do our budgets at home. You look at how you spend your money and evaluate ways in which you can save yourself some money. And I think that's one of my jobs as mayor, to make sure that we are spending money in our community efficiently, and also that people are knowing that it's very transparent on how their taxes are evaluated. So that's another important thing that we need to consider when we keep saying taxes, taxes, taxes.
Next question, what role do you see higher ed playing in the city? For instance, how would your administration work with Mass Bay Community College and Framingham State? We'll allow you to start, Candidate Spicer.
First of all, being a person that has a background in education and looking at the importance of a pipeline, our children need to feel that there's a way, there's access, there's an opportunity for them to move on. And I look at both Framingham State and Mass Bay as jewels in this community. Because we are so unique, especially in Framingham, that we have both of these anchoring jewels in our community. For our children that may not know that they can access a 4-year education, a 2-year opportunity is better. A certificate opportunity is something they want. People that are transitioning back into the world of work, that is the importance of being able to have flexibility and opportunity. Being a person that ran a career and technical school, I saw that many of my students who had so many skill sets, but they didn't know how to move forward. Having those articulation agreements, 2+2 agreements with 2-year universities were pivotal in making a difference for some of my students. And I see that as so important in our community. Framingham is a very diverse community, and people are coming with different skill sets. To have an opportunity to learn a new trade and to transition from one job to another by having an opportunity to attend Framingham State or Mass Bay, that is pivotal. That is life-changing for a lot of people. And also the opportunity to have the partnerships with some of our businesses in our higher ed institutions. Another pivotal point, because everything that has to happen in terms of the world of work can happen on these college campuses. And these kids are able to get on-the-job experiences right on their campuses through internships and those parallel partnerships with equipment. I know I've done it many times when it comes to having the resources to build the capacity to teach the content that kids need to. It's having that relationship, whether it's starting a new program, cybersecurity. How do you do that? How do you connect with those in law enforcement? How do you connect those job opportunities for kids, the internships? That's where the sweet spot is, working with both institutions. And I'm looking forward to working closely. As Mayor of Framingham, I'm going to commit to trying to work with them, keep those relationships strong, and that we're actually able to keep moving the needle for both institutions.
I agree. We need to look at workforce development and make sure that both the university and Mass Bay Community College are providing and partnering with our local businesses and community on things that are important. But part of the question is, what do we as a community do? So that's a facilitation role we can play. We also need to play a role as a partner in the community. We've enjoyed great relations with both Framingham State and Mass Bay in recent years. That hasn't always been the case. But part of it is we need to think about, Mass Bay is soon to be homeless. We need to think about how we deal with their long-term location. We need to think about the real estate and community-related issues as to where they locate, how they locate, and make sure that they remain near and close to the student population, that they help improve their lives and be part of the community. There are a whole bunch of issues relative to that. We've had no discussion about the RFP that's on the street right now, or about the fact that the town of Framingham was unable to close the deal on a $61 million proposal by Deval Patrick to relocate in downtown Framingham. We need to work with Governor Baker. We need to work with the administration. We need to work with our legislative delegation, folks that I've had the pleasure of working with and partnering with throughout most of my life to figure out that specific real estate challenge. Likewise with Framingham State, we need to think about traffic and pedestrian issues. We need to think about parking, partnering, how we deal with simple issues like Loring Arena and Bowditch Field, and how we create greater partnerships for them. How we grow partnerships like Danforth at the Maynard Building, where we take Framingham State's institutional and financial prowess and use it to partner with a not-for-profit for cultural benefit in our community. We need to think of partnerships that take a large institution in our community and work with it in each and every level of our government. How our law enforcement folks can work closer with the law enforcement people at Framingham State to deal with issues of hate crimes and violence in our community and at Framingham State. How we deal with Framingham State students that go into a neighborhood and have issues and problems, and deal with them from a community standpoint by convening neighbors and working through the very difficult problems. The details do matter. The specifics are important. We can agree on workforce development and the things that they do, but part of being a good partner as a community is working through and partnering all of the little details that make a difference. How are we going to cross Route 9 and how are we going to deal with it? When the community offers a liquor license that's directly across the street in a highway, and we're shocked that students are crossing the street. We've got to think about those decisions and how they impact the university and their students. So, thank you.
Let's stay on education for a little bit. There are several underperforming schools in Framingham. How do you plan to incorporate the business community in your hopefully plan to make the corrections that need to be made in those schools? We'll start with you, Candidate Stephanie.
Thank you, Tina. Framingham has 4 underperforming schools, as you talked about. As mayor, the primary responsibility is not to advise the schools on education policy, but to make sure our schools are prepared for our kids and our kids are prepared for our schools. The first part of that, we've talked about. That's generating revenue, growing our economy, and making sure money is available for our schools, our students. The second piece of that is one that we as a community have not been honest with ourselves about. We need to confront the fact that the students in these underperforming schools are no less intelligent, no less capable than their colleagues in other places. The facilities are spectacular. The staffs in those places are wonderful. So what do? First and foremost, I propose several bold initiatives that bind together our business community, our ability to provide grants with the needs of the community. What are other communities doing in this area? High quality, universal early childhood education. Look at other communities, look at education studies. We need to make sure that 4-year-olds have an equal opportunity to succeed. That means they need to enter kindergarten and first grade, reading to learn, not learning to read. Because when they're learning to read, they're falling behind. When they stay behind, they fall behind, they stay behind. So why are we surprised that these same children are not performing at the same rate? It's not about the tests, it's not about the staff, it's not about the funding. It's about what's going on outside our schools. Secondarily, we need to look at after-school enrichment program. When I was a selectman, I took and raised funds privately from our local corporations and worked with the Marlboro Boys and Girls Club to bring the Boys and Girls Club to Framingham. That provided an equal opportunity for after-school enrichment for more than 50 Latino boys and girls that were economically disadvantaged. They got opportunities available to them that would not otherwise be available to them. So we need to make sure after-school enrichment, internships, mentors, etc. are available to children of all ages, of all walks of life, and all grades. We do that by working with our local corporations. I've talked to TJX and Staples in particular. They'd love to have their employees participate and be involved, but they need a welcoming voice. They're pleased to look at their grants and opportunities rather than pulling them away from our community, but they need to have a partner. That partner is someone who can help us bring those jobs, bring those opportunities to our community. They're bold initiatives. I understand they're going to take a lot of capital, a lot of energy and focus. That's why day one, I was prepared to make that commitment to us as a community. We need to be prepared to take bold action.
This is an excellent question. The way I look at our 4 underperforming schools in Framingham, there are 3 elementary schools and 1 middle school. So we know that our pipeline in education is going to be altered. If these kids are not feeling successful or are not experiencing success early on, when they start to move through high school and beyond, it may make it very challenging. So we need to address this issue from multiple points. And the question related to how business can work closely with the schools to move the needle. In my work at the Museum of Science, we have done this with businesses and done it very successfully. As I refer back to the Mass Business Roundtable, they wanted to figure out how they as businesses can be more helpful. And also looking at other chambers of commerces and business community, how do they support school and education? And one of the ideas that I certainly feel is a great one is to adopt a school, is to look to our businesses in the community. Each one of these underperforming schools, you're going to adopt them. We have a relationship. We have a relationship that we will cultivate and build on how do we move the needle, whether it's resources, and resources, by the way, are not always just money. It's people. It's relationships with the teachers, it's relationships with the leadership in the building. That is critically important, and other communities have done this, and done this very successfully, where the business community has stepped in and offered their excellence to the school system. And I see that important for these 4 underperforming schools, but I also see it important in our high school that is being quite successful right now. I see those relationships as pivotal. The Mass Business Roundtable does have an early childhood initiative. They see the value, and they have moved that needle, and I've worked very closely with the Mass Business Roundtable on early childhood education and STEM. And STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math, how the importance of those relationships make a difference. Same thing with our STEM center at Framingham State. I sit on the STEM Advisory Council, and a part of our work on the Advisory Council is making sure that we have these STEM centers throughout Massachusetts that are offering professional development for teachers, that are making sure those relationships are happening across the board. And that is one of the things that I've seen, is sustainability of those kinds of relationships. It is also being able to tackle the problem head on. And even as mayor, I may not have to directly do this, but I certainly feel my expertise and experience, I will help the superintendent of Framingham Schools tackle some of these issues, even at a distance, but certainly using that expertise to make sure that he can also move that needle for his students in Framingham.
And time is moving very quickly. We have time for 2 more questions. One of them, we're talking about some disparities. Obviously, we're talking about the school system and some underperforming schools. In our research, we found that there is a big difference between North and South Framingham. South Framingham has a higher level of poverty and a lower level of education. Candidate Stefanini, how would you try to address that to make sure that everybody in the city has a fair opportunity and is on the same page?
So, we talk about cultural diversity in our community and celebrating it, and we do. But we tend to celebrate our cultural, linguistic, and other diversities, and less so around our economic diversity. We have some of the poorest census blocks in all of Metro West in some of our southeast areas of our community. We need to recognize that those areas, those populations have very different needs than do other people in our community, and we need to, again, start with respect. We need to meet with them, we need to talk with them. I have, over the last 6 months, and certainly over the last 30 years, volunteered, worked, and reached out into all of those communities to volunteer for community groups, creating the Boys and Girls Club, volunteering groups in homework or other groups of people in our community, participating in helping simple things. You know, my mother was the school nurse at Woodrow Wilson. And each day she went to school with her Framingham State bag, because she had 2 degrees, an undergraduate and 2 master's degrees from Framingham State, with it filled with clothing and food and combs. And every day came home empty. And part of our servicing and dealing with the community is recognizing that sometimes we have to speak in Spanish or Portuguese, that sometimes we have to provide pizza and daycare for a meeting, that sometimes we have to take and go the extra yard to recognize that the needs for education. That's why you talk about universal pre-K, you talk about after-school enrichment. I'll tell you why I created the Boys and Girls Club. I was teaching at Framingham South High School, and I had a Latino boy who I was working with who was on the edge of a gang. I helped get him into an athletic program. He had an issue, he got in, the athletic program got him away from the gang, and part of it was going on. One day, while playing football for the first time, and being part of this, one of the coaches accused him, a Puerto Rican boy, with appropriating his wallet. He realized he left it at home. The boy quit. 2 days later, at 3:30 in the afternoon, he was arrested for driving a car in the Killer Bee Gang armed robbery at the Honeydew on 126. Football was the difference between that kid having an opportunity and staying in school and not. We've got to come to grips with the fact that we do this as personal relationships. Dr. Tremblay has done a spectacular job of bringing detail back to our schools, bringing personal relationships and dialogue. We've got to look at it one kid at a time, one neighborhood at a time. I I know those people, I know those neighborhoods. I have certainly made them an active part of my campaign. I've certainly made them an active part of my life. And as mayor, I will make sure that the voiceless have a voice and that they have a seat at the table in our government.
This is an interesting observation of the data that was presented, and it's very stark. When you look at the data that was presented between 01 zip code and 02 zip code, and looking at some of that data in terms of the people, what stood out for me is the distress factor, and whereas a significant number of people that live south of Route 9 are distressed, because here's the thing, when you're distressed, that's your mental health. Your mental health impacts what you can do on a day-to-day basis. You can't go to work in peace. You can't think about moving the needle for yourself if your mental health is not right. So we have to really look at, and the comparison was so stark. It's the notion of trying to have people pull themselves up by their bootstraps when people don't even have boots on. And that's where the difference lies. Or know how to access economic wealth, or know how to access the services. And that's one thing that during this campaign, I've had a chance to traverse this entire community. And you see, the south of Route 9 is very comfortable for me because I'm a kid from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I understand what it's not to have. I understand what it means to struggle. I understand how you have to make some tough decisions sometimes in order to make your life work. So it's not about economic growth because you don't have an opportunity to grow anything because you don't have your basic needs met. So that's one of the things that I will be looking very closely at growing a business, particularly in the downtown area. I see that as the most pressing part of our community in terms of economic growth. Because if in fact we are not caring for our people's mental health, their physical health, their opportunity to think about economic wealth is diminished. And I, being a teacher for 16 years here in Framingham, I've come across many families that are dealing with so many issues, and issues that impact them being able to send their children to school safely, them being able to go to work comfortably, and some of them are so severe, whether it being social issues around being beaten at home, or the mere fact that, you know what, they know their status and know that immigration could be a situation for them. That's an everyday stress factor for people when they wake up and not knowing the answer on how to move forward. So I'll be looking at all of these opportunities, and I'll be working very closely with our health department to really think, to get at the pulse, because that, when I think about south of Framingham, that's one of the things that is critical, people's mental health, before we can get to their economic health.
All right, last question, and I will let you take this one, candidate Stefanini, first. How would you describe your leadership style? We have some examples here. Do you tend to make decisions and delegate, or do you work towards a consensus?
Thank you. In the private sector and in the public sector, I have demonstrated again and again several specific leadership qualities. First of all, I am very comfortable leading and I'm very comfortable following. And it depends on the circumstances whether leadership is needed or whether or not support is required. That means that I delegate strong leaders and I expect them to perform and I hold them accountable, and I've done that throughout my career in multiple roles. It means you have to give them specific agendas. You have to have specific direction that you provide somebody. That means you need to be straight with people. That means you need to look them in the eye when it's good news and when it's bad news, and you have to be honest. You have to have the same answer to every question, no matter what your audience is. Likewise, and so during my tenure as a selectman, which was a period of time which was, I think, well known for transparency, for accountability, for efficiency, for getting things done, we created hundreds of acres of open space, grew our local economy, provided curbside recycling and hazardous waste days. We took and brought EMS from EMTs to paramedics and so many other things to put contracts out to bid. Many of those things I talk about are things that I collaborated with people. I appointed people to those positions, I gave them direction, and then I left them alone. We gave the fire chief and the ER director of Framingham Union the directive to go to paramedics, and then we left them alone to write the contracts and to do things. but you have to provide the leadership. Local politics, local government is personal. You have to know everybody at the table. And I don't shy away from talking to anyone. I don't shy away from knowing everyone. That means some people I agree with and some people I disagree with. You have to be able to look a family member in the eye and say no, and an enemy in the eye and say yes. You have to appoint people who agree with you and disagree with you. People who worked on your campaign and people who did not work on your campaign. I've done that throughout my professional career. So I tend to be a collaborator, but I also at the same time am not afraid to step in and be the sheriff, to make sure that people are behaving in an appropriate way, whether there are ethical issues. When I was on the 3-member board of selectmen with all the powers and duties of the mayor, we had to terminate some employees. You know what? I'm prepared to do that, but I'm also prepared to reward those that are meeting the standards and doing the things they need to do. It needs to always be about us. It needs to be about community. It needs to be, we need to change our decision-making and our filter from insiders and municipal managers to parents, to teachers, to taxpayers, to residents. So yes, I will provide strong leadership when it's needed, and I will follow when it's not. I will collaborate and work with people and listen to information and work with everyone.
Leadership is one of those words that get used very often, and I sometimes think that leadership is not always understood. I did my doctoral work in educational leadership, and to do this work, I also looked at forms of leadership. I've been a leader for over 20 years, and I'm a collaborator. I collaborate with everyone, and part of my belief around leadership is that you are only as strong as your weakest link, and you're also needing to be a good leader. You need divergent thinking around you. So I like to be around people who think differently than I do. I want to hear their ideas. I want them to push back on me. And when I look at Framingham, next week we're about to make a big decision. And as mayor, I'm going to work with council members, council at large members, but at the end of the day, whoever's in that room, our work is about the city of Framingham. Check your ego at the door, let's get busy. Take away all the personal, but let's keep focus on what needs to happen for Framingham. And that is one of the things that I will do for the city. When I look at issues and challenges around leadership, first of all, you have to have the vision. And I consider myself a visionary. I think not what is happening, but I think what could happen. And then coming back to look at the steps are necessary in order to achieve that goal. That's leadership. Leadership is not making sure that you control situations. It's giving people the opportunity to grow themselves as leaders. In every position I've had, and I think I've done that so well that I've grown my staff where they've actually gone on to other leadership jobs, I see that as a success as a leader. To make sure you have people around you that you can continue to foster that leadership in them. I work in a way that is collaborative, but I also want people to have an opportunity to make their own mistakes. I think that's when you learn, is when you are able to see a situation, try it, and even if it doesn't work, you've learned from it. And I've had it happen with my team. And I have the interesting thing working on this campaign, I do have many different thinkers that are working with me on this campaign. And some think like I do, some think very differently, some were people that were interested in becoming a city and some were not. And that's the strength of any organization, is having opportunity for people to grow their own personal leadership, but as a leader being able to guide the ship in a way that makes good sense. And accountability is the most critical part. Even when things are working well, own it, but when they're not, own it. And I will do that as Mayor of Framingham.
So many people, as you mentioned, the election is next Tuesday. Many folks, this is the last time you're hearing from both of you. So we're going to give you each 2 minutes to close, and we'll start with Stephanie.
I like going first. Thank you to everyone again. On November 7th, we will choose the leader and leaders that will likely set the tone, direction, and agenda for our community for the next decade or more. We'll choose a first full-time mayor to manage our $300 million budget, to to negotiate our contracts, to lead us in a strategic master planning process, to help us as a community work through our problems. Framingham is not a big community. We're a small community. The challenges we face are personal. They're not academic. We need to look each other in the eye and work with each other and figure out how we resolve problems. I've spent 30 years in local government as a state rep, selectman, volunteer on numerous civic boards, held one of the highest policy-setting jobs in our Commonwealth, and I've worked for the last 15 years in the private practice of law, working with clients and government officials. I've had the pleasure of calling each of the last 7 governors friend and colleague and to work with them and their staff, the very people who populate all of the businesses and agencies that make the decisions to decide how we clean up our 3 environmentally contaminated sites. The grants for our early childhood education and after-school enrichment. The people that are going to decide whether a 4-month bridge project on Winter Street is a 14-month project or a 4-month project. I'm prepared to put my passion for our community, my knowledge of its people and its institutions, my work in and outside of government to do the tough details that are necessary to put the rhetoric into reality and to make our community a better place for all of us to live, to learn, to work, to play. Thank you. I ask for your consideration and your vote for November 7th, and whether you're voting for me or Yvonne, please get out and vote. It's exciting, this dynamic of what's going on in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. This is historic. I started this run for mayor in this very building. And this is the last place I'll have another forum in this format. And I will say it has been an incredible journey looking at ways in which this community bar is going to be set in 5 days. I'm excited to be a part of this process. I bring a lot of talent and a lot of skills that I think Framingham will need, and I also believe that Framingham is a great place. I've been here for 32 years. I have no desire to move anywhere else. And I think looking at our business community, many of you have been here for many years. I look at this institution, Ken Steakhouse. It is iconic. It is known around the world. And I'm glad to have started my campaign here, but I also see it as a symbol of change and growth, because they truly has changed this room since the last time I was here. They completely remodeled this space. I see that as opportunity, an opportunity for us to continue in this community. A community is only as strong as its business. That's what keeps the heart and soul of a community, is the businesses, the people, and the ability to keep growing. In order to think about this critically as we move forward, I created a platform that includes economic development. I've thought about this very critically, and I want to also make sure that people feel that they have a seat at the table. We'll do this together, Framingham. One day, one step at a time. I'm coming to you with honesty and integrity, and I humbly ask for your vote, those of you that live in Framingham, next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you to both candidates, John Stefanini and Yvonne Spicer. Paul, it's back to you.
Thank you, Paul. Nice job. That's on the works.
So thank you very much, and Tina Martin from WGBH Boston, thank you so much for moderating the panel. What we'd like to do now is shift things over to our panel for city councilor, at-large councilor positions. Take maybe a 2-minute break if you'd like to refresh your coffee. We'll give people a chance to stretch out while we change things over, and we'll be back promptly in 2 minutes. Promptly in 2 minutes. Okay, next we'd like to invite the at-large councilors to provide positions on a similar set of questions. As I indicated at the beginning of the program this morning, Ann Brennan and Shanley Reardon will be sharing moderation duties for the council Councilor debate. And for these questions, again, they'll be drawing from the same pool, but potentially could have some different questions asked of them. But in each case, every candidate here today will be able to answer the same question. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ann. You can get started. So thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Shannon.
That's the first question.
So what do you see as the identity of the Metro West region, and how would you describe Framingham's role in it?
The identity of the Metro West region actually came about from the Metro West Daily News. A former journalist had coined the term because we were becoming and behaving like a region that was cohesive. And I think Framingham's identity as part of that was, at that time, the hub. I think we still are the hub. I think as we go forward, we need to make sure that we maintain that position as the hub. Framingham has a lot more resources and a lot more to offer than individually than the other communities do. We have a chance with our economy to continue to grow it in ways that serve the communities around us, which will bring in resources and dollars from other communities. And I think that's something that's very important, and something that we need to make sure when we're doing planning and we're doing economic planning, which we need to do. We need to really figure out exactly which businesses we think will fit here, which will work well, and go out and sell Framingham to them. Don't sit back and wait for somebody to come to us. We need to go out and sell Framingham. They're not going to come looking to us. The good opportunities are the ones we go out and find and bring back and make sure that they fit what Metro West and Framingham needs.
Thank you. Framingham identity has been an economic hub of Metro West and Boston area. However, we have lost our cutting edge and we have declined quite a bit over the years. As the chair of the planning board, I have been a big advocate to bring business, particularly small business here, and to redevelop and redefine and regain our edge for economic development and growth in the community. We have a diverse community. Framingham is full of resources. We have all kinds of amenities that could be enhanced and improved upon, but we have failed to do that. Economic development has been my sore spot. The planning board is the permitting agent for economic development, as was previously stated. That's been my big thing here, is that I feel that we have been patchwork zoned, that we just are recipients of applications that come in. There's been no effort to cheerlead in bringing any type of development that's been amenable or desirable for Framingham that we have sought. So zoning is what I would say. The planning board has been very diligent with a master plan that was redeveloped in 2014 and adopted and amended, and we have a work plan. We do have a master plan. I hear continually from mayoral candidates that we don't have one. Yes, we do. The master plan has been done by the planning board and adopted, and it's been worked on, and we continue to work on it, but unfortunately we have been stifled by town meeting not to be able to develop the zoning that would be amenable and applicable to the current economic climate that Framingham has that we need to redevelop. So on that, I will give this to Mr. King.
Thank you. I think Framingham for a long time definitely has been the focal point of the leadership of Metro West. And I think with that comes both burdens and opportunities. What I mean by that is, someone after the debate we had last Saturday came up to me and said, why do we have so many social services in Framingham? Why aren't they in the other towns and things like that? That's a question I've heard for 15 years or so. And that's one of the things that happens when you're where the people are, where you are, where the services are. Those types of things happen, and that's one of the burdens we have. One of the opportunities, I don't mean that in a negative necessarily way either, but I'm just saying those are the types of services that are going to be required in large communities. And we have the opportunities. We have the opportunities to develop our office parks. We have the opportunity to develop our shopping centers. Those are the things that we've done. I think we've done a very good job in the last few years, the last decade or so, of developing our university. And as town manager, I can remember going up to Framingham State University and sitting with Helen Diamond, who was the president at the time, and she outlaid her vision to me for the future of the university. And at the time, the economy was bad, and I was thinking, wow, good, but where do I get the money to do this? And really, if you look at that place, it's really transformed over the years since the 20 years I've got my master's degree there. So I think the areas that we have already, the challenges we have and the opportunities we've had, shopping centers, life science businesses, we've done a good job. I think we need to look at the other areas where we continue to do a good job, follow the model of like Framingham State, and look at things like the hospital. We have a good community hospital. We have to make sure we continue to make that hospital, give them the ability to grow in this community too. So we have all the different assets that a fixture of a leadership in an economic region should have. And we just can't look narrowly at shopping centers or office parks or the burdens we may have or perceive to have. We look at all the components and continue to make sure that we as the leader of Metro West are able to take full advantage of that.
Transportation has consistently been one of the bigger issues for both residents and businesses. What are Framingham's top, or what do you see as Framingham's top transportation issues? And what is your plan to address these problems? And where will the money come from? We can start with your candidate, Ron.
Thank you, that's right up my alley. So the planning board, as most of you might know, has funded, has partially funded the first phase of the master transportation traffic plan that DPW has been doing. That first phase actually has come in. The results of that we have not seen, and it should be released very shortly. The planning board is also planning on contributing another $100,000 of mitigation funds that we've got over the years through development that we put aside for that purpose exclusively to address the second phase of the transportation plan and traffic, so that we can figure out how we are going to deal with traffic. And coming here, I heard the comment earlier that almost was almost late here because traffic was so bad on Edgell Road. It took forever just to get to Route 9. So yes, traffic's a huge problem. However, with development does come traffic. So we need to co-op MassDOT. Part of the problem is that we don't have ownership of a lot of the major routes that go through Framingham, and we are the recipient of traffic rather than the creator of traffic, because we are a cut-through community of Southborough, Westborough, Marlborough, Boston. Everybody travels through Framingham, downtown, through Route 9, through Route 30, through your neighborhood. So we need to be able to address that through careful zoning, redevelopment, and through our master plan and economic development plan that is actually just getting kicked off for baseline information. So all those components together will come up with a plan how we can move forward, not to mention the bike and pedestrian plan that we also have in place, and housing plan.
So transportation, I don't claim to be an expert in transportation, but it's something I've certainly been aware of for many years and the problems that go with it. When I was town manager, we used to run the local lift bus system, for those who might remember it. We ran out of our planning department, and frankly, we did not do a very good job at it. And that wasn't really anybody's fault. It was just, no one really had the expertise. It was a fledgling system. And, the buses were always in disrepair. Sometimes they showed up, sometimes they didn't. And it was clear to me then that Framingham was kind of getting the short end of things when it came to public transportation. We were paying over $1 million a year at the time, the MBTA, and we were getting practically nothing to grant for the lift bus. And you go to some of the inner core communities like Newton and Needham, you'd see the big yellow MBTA buses driving by and picking people up. People had reliability in those transportations. They knew those buses were going to show up, and therefore they could build their lives around that. We started to work in that direction ourselves now with the MWRTA. We've built a reliable transportation system. It's not like our system 15 years ago. You wouldn't be sure the bus would show up, or it would break down. When you're behind it in traffic, you wouldn't be overcome by black smoke, coming out at you and things like that. So now that's what it was 15 years ago. So I think continuing to build a reliable public transportation system is good. We've made major strides in that area, and we've done it by getting the money from the state and paying less to MBTA. I think we have to make sure that service is available to the people when they need it and where they need it. So I think that still needs some work, the weekend work, things like that, when people in the hours of the day when people need that transportation. So having a reliable public transportation system I think is the first thing to start solving our clogged roads problems. I said this in many forums, I'm going to say it, we have a ton more cars than we used to, and not many more roads than we used to, so that's going to create traffic. There's traffic everywhere, it's not just a Framingham issue, but I think looking at things like a reliable public transportation system will be a start at least to try to at least mitigate, not solve some of the challenges we face with transportation.
I serve on the NWRTA Regional Advisory Board as the Framingham representative. And the growth in the RTA over the last few years has been tremendous, not only for Framingham, but hooking Framingham to other communities. And that's a step that will help us with the cut-through issue. Because yes, people do, you can't get there from here, but you can certainly drive through here to get there somehow. I don't know how they figure it out. But that's a big plus. And the fact that the RTA can grow its base and grow its ridership enables them to also grow local service. One of the things that's going to be very important going forward is the transit-oriented development that we've done downtown to revitalize downtown. We're trying to put something in place where people will be using public transportation, using the trains. Sure, certainly can use their cars on the weekends, but their day-to-day, Monday through Friday, getting back and forth to work, and as the neighborhood revitalizes, they won't need cars, they'll be able to walk. And we need to look at programs and projects like that. We also need to look at when we're citing new corporations and companies who want to come or want to expand. We've been fortunate enough to have planned far enough ahead of time that we've got TJX with huge headquarters right near the Mass Pike. Same thing with the industrial park and with Staples Crossing near the Mass Pike. People in, people out, not clogging up the roads. We also have to start looking at being able to provide shuttle buses from our train station downtown to those companies. Certainly we do have some services that are available, and MapWorks does a lot of busing and shuttling of their folks. And we need to do the same thing to help our businesses get the younger workforce who want to live in the city. But that's the only way we're going to keep cutting-edge businesses, especially large companies here, is to be able to get their workers to and from work in a convenient way.
How will you work with higher education institutions in Framingham to make the most of these resources?
So, first of all, just as full disclosure, I do work part-time for Framingham State University in a very not significant role to their operations and financing, but I just want to make that clear. So, as I stated a few minutes ago, I think Framingham State has done a really good job over the last number of years in cementing its campus in Framingham and really making itself a presence. The town-gown relationships, so to speak, are much stronger than they've ever been. So I think Framingham State can be a focal point. Again, I'm running for city council. I'm not going to be the mayor, so I'm not sure these things are all going to be within our confines. But I think the idea of trying to get Framingham State to continue to grow as an institution in Framingham is something we should work with the university on. I would like to see something like Colby College has done in Maine, just as an example. Colby's expanded into the downtown of Waterville, Maine, which is kind of a downtrodden community, certainly compared to Framingham. But those are the types of ideas. I'd like to see Framingham State maybe, when they continue, which I assume they will do, to expand their footprint, maybe to look at slightly different areas of town to do so and bring the vibrancy that the university brings to different areas, be it a program of housing or something like that in the downtown area, may be something that we can facilitate. That combined with Mass Bay. I think the Mass Bay situation, we missed a vote in Mass Bay 5 or 6 years ago. There's no question about that. That was a major miss. Mass Bay was looking to, had some opportunity and had some ability to come into downtown Framingham, and we made a proposal. I don't think it was well done. It was done in an executive session. It was never discussed with the community. And what Framingham essentially suggested to Mass Bay is we'll sell you our old garage, which is the dilapidated we don't want, and the Memorial Building, which is pretty much in the same boat. So I think that was a missed opportunity that happened at that cost of time. Hopefully we can get that back. So I think we have great opportunities with both our institutions of higher education, and hopefully that with the mayor we can move forward and cement those opportunities in a way that benefits both the town and the institutions.
I think we have tremendous opportunity with both Framingham State and Mass Bay. Mass Bay, number one, we absolutely have to keep them here. We need to work right now to make sure that we can extend the lease they have at the Fuller Middle School for the amount of time they need to be able to get their campus up and running, or we are going to miss the boat. And that is something that the municipal city government has an opportunity to get done. And if we don't do that, shame on us, because we've got to find a way for that to work. And the leverage that we have, having both Framingham State and Mass Bay here, is huge, because number one, they benefit from each other, and we all benefit from that. Our public school children will have the opportunity to, interact with college students like they have in the past. I mean, when I went to school, we had student teachers from Framingham State. We can partner in many ways. We can partner with offering advanced placement classes. Instead of having a regular AP class, that we can't have the same flexibility of having 12 different versions or 12 different subject matters. If we partner with Framingham State or Mass Bay, we could not only have the child getting their AP credit, they could also be getting college credit. That's one class that their parents don't have to pay for. And having those opportunities and building those relationships that are win-win, we get away from the town gown. They are part of our community. They're a valuable part of our community. Framingham State has just saved a 40-year institution of the Danforth Museum. And it was very difficult to get through, people's minds what that value was. And people in Framingham are now starting to see things in a more cooperative way. And this is the time that we need to leverage those relationships for everybody's benefit.
Thank you. So we just brokered a deal. Luckily, town meeting did accept the sale of the Maynard building to Framingham State University. I sat on the real property, voted for that on behalf of the planning board, and I think that's the beginning of a better relationship with Framingham State. I would like to see, and I know I hear from some people in town that they don't want to see the colleges to expand within Framingham downtown area, but I think it's critical for our development that we do embrace education, that we do embrace the expansion, and we make sure we keep Mass Bay here. My daughter currently is in a nursing program at Mass Bay, and I am really happy that we have them here, and I would really be heartbroken to see them have to leave. So I think they're a huge component coming from Wellesley, where we have Wellesley College and Babson College. Educational component and the integration into the community is huge. I work at Newton Housing, and we have LaSalle Community and Boston College. Newton Housing, we use interns from the colleges to help us with our work in affordable housing, and to do community outreach. So I think that the colleges are really, really important to developing our community. We should be embracing them. We should be providing places for them to expand into and grow, and especially starting with the arts and expanding further out into that. I think that's so important. And I see Ms. Spicer shaking her head. STEM, I think that's really important, because without science, technology, and engineering and math, those programs need expansion, because that is where we're going in the future. It's all about technology. It's all about math. It's all about education, because that's the cornerstone, the beginning of any development in any community. People need to be educated, and they need to be availed of services so they can grow and expand. I see I'm being timed. Did you like to keep that?
I already answered.
You ever go back to Ann?
Oh, you want that?
What is your position on a moratorium on housing projects? And if you support it, how will you use the time during the pause?
I don't support a moratorium on housing projects per se. I know there's been a proposal for a moratorium on apartment construction, and I still question that. I'd like to know what the plan is to do during that time period. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it if it was something that was feasible, could be done, is not obstructing somebody's property use, but has an end game. And a 6-month proposal, is a 6-month moratorium going to get us there? So I can't say I'm in favor of what's been proposed, but I'm open to hearing what's out there. As far as other development besides apartments, I think we run a risk of violating people's personal property rights by just putting a moratorium in place. We certainly have review processes and neighbors who have a lot to say in different areas. But I don't see a purpose for either the single family or the things that have been already are on the table to put a moratorium, other than to inhibit somebody's personal property rights. So that I have a problem with. As far as housing in Framingham is concerned and apartments are concerned, we have to be very strategic about what we do. We need apartments for certain kinds of things. Certainly downtown, it's going to be rules over retail. If we don't have people living down there, we're not going to get the retail business we need to revitalize downtown. Do we need apartments just because that's all that's saleable right now? I don't think so. I'm very concerned about taking valuable pieces of commercial property off the tax rolls in perpetuity and making them residential, so that the Staples project, for instance, those apartments don't do anything for Framingham. We take some of the valuable corporate space off the tax rolls, put it at a lower residential rate that requires more services, give our businesses fewer places to expand when they need to grow, and there's nothing that really comes out of it for us. So that project I was opposed to. But that's opposition, that's not a moratorium.
Thank you. This is my question. So moratorium, I say no to moratorium because Framingham's been in the state of moratorium for probably the last 20-something years. So we're trying to create an image that we're actually business friendly, that we're actually development friendly, and I would be very much opposed to that. I know I have spoken to one of the candidates for mayor about that I was very surprised to hear someone supporting a moratorium. I think particularly the climate in Framingham with a lot of the people that are very local, I think that would just lead to a longer moratorium and less getting done. And I think, again, the answer to the question isn't whether we need a moratorium. We need to do some zoning changes that have long been overdue that need to be addressed. Those will address the question of where apartments go, where residential property is going to be placed, where our commercial development and how it gets developed, what type of businesses go. And we need things for business, we need things to come here for. You can have residential properties and apartments, but if there's no amenities and there's no related resources, then you have no reason to move to Framingham. So transportation-oriented development, that's great, but you need to have a reason to come here. So I would want to develop more commercial properties and less residential, even though there is a demand for residential right now. There's a demand for apartments, there's a demand for active adult housing, there's a demand for all kinds of housing, there's a shortage of housing, believe it or not. So moratorium, I would definitely not be in favor of that. I would listen to reasons why somebody would want a moratorium, but I think the better resolution to that is to fix the zoning and do it in an immediate time frame rather than later.
I think it's an interesting question because we definitely have housing challenges in Framingham, and it seems like most of them now focus on the apartments. We have so many apartments proposed. One of the biggest problems is it's an historical problem that goes back many, many years. In the early 1970s, all the apartments on Route 9 that you see out in the western part of town just all erupted at once. People were outraged, and they put essentially a moratorium back there on multifamily housing, which was in place for essentially 40 years at this point. So you can call it a moratorium, and I'd call it really good planning. Is what happened by putting that moratorium of sorts in the 1970s is we never did develop the type of housing over the years that other communities have developed. So we don't have some of the housing options in Framingham that you see in other communities. And I agree, we are missing some of the housing that would be nice to have here. Affordable over 55 housing is certainly missing. So we do have a lot of over 55 housing now seeming to sprout up, but you have to have a decent amount of money in order to be able to move to that housing. And I don't think that particularly helps to a lot of different people who have grown up and grown older in this town. So whether it's a moratorium or how you want to describe it, I think planning for our residential use, especially apartments, is important. I don't think maybe we should we don't overbuild. I'd like to see, and I don't understand the economics of this, and maybe somebody can explain it to me at some point, but certainly there's certainly a desire for apartments versus condos, and I think that if we're going to have multifamily housing, it may be more desirable to have condos than apartments in all these places, but no one seems to want to build condos anymore. Or 20 years ago, everybody wanted to build condos. So obviously economics of that has shifted. So I think understanding what we're doing and understanding how it's going to impact us long term is the most important part, and I think most of that focus is going to be on multifamily housing residential developments overall are another concern, which my time does not allow me to finish talking about.
Well.
As both of the mayoral candidates pointed out, the Framingham sign bylaw is overly restrictive, inflexible, expensive, and frustrating for businesses. What are your thoughts on this bylaw, and would you support changes such as having different rules for on Route 9 as opposed to downtown?
That question's my question. That question's my question. I hate the sign bylaw. I would just get rid of it. But we have, okay, so being on the planning board, the sign bylaw used to be, and I have to correct the speaker that said that the chair of the planning board, the person that's running around Framingham and telling people how to run their signs is a former member of the planning board, but never the chair. So just that correction. So the sign bylaw I find to be very restrictive, very harmful to business. Businesses need that visibility. I would love to see, thank you, I would love to see the sign bylaw completely revised, amended. Yes, we need to have some regulations, but they can't be prohibitive, they can't be punishing to business. And as a member of the planning board, I actually got up at town meeting when it used to be under the planning board's control and requested that town meeting vote to put it under the purview of the ZBA. Because I felt that the creators, certain people that were sitting on the planning board that created that bylaw should not be the end-all judger of how that gets executed. So town meeting in its wisdom actually did give it to ZBA, so I find at least it gets a more fair review. However, I think we do need a drastic overhaul of the sign bylaw. And as to Shoppers World, for example, DDR, we have specific regulations that they're exempt from that sign bylaw because we wrote it as one, it was the way it was permitted. We actually have a sign bylaw that the planning board controls for DDRs for that property in Shoppers World, so that it's a little more relaxed and it gives them more leverage. So to give them the visibility that they need and the identity that they deserve. So no, I'm not in favor of the current sign bylaw, and yes, it does need to be revised.
I also agree that it certainly needs some revision, and we need that to be cognizant of where businesses are in the town and what they're trying to accomplish through their signs. The sign bylaw, and the crux of the major transition in the sign bylaw did happen when I was town manager. I did not have much to do with it. It was done by a committee and approved by town meeting. I think that there are some aspects of the sign bylaw that were unreasonable and have been punishing to businesses, and those types of things definitely should have been by now fixed. It wasn't a total disaster, however, because you have to turn it around, and you have to look where we were and where we tried to go. So there were some different things in that sign bylaw that required people to pull over a number of years, which I understand can be very expensive. But if you look just at the overall streetscape of Route 9 now, I could say that it's improved because of the sign bylaw. So we have to find a balance between what it looks like and what we want our town to look like versus what is reasonable for business. Because there's certainly things, like I remember when the bylaw was in, I didn't have much, as I say, to do with it being how it was put together, but I certainly heard about it from people who weren't happy with it. And I can remember hearing from Bose about that there was some potential, and I think it was eventually resolved, but the big Bose sign, the building had to come off, okay? I don't think that type of thing works in any way. And just some of the size issues and things like that regarding signs for small businesses, I think have to be rethought. So yes, I think the bylaw has to be rethought, it has to be more flexible, it has to probably be more business friendly, and allow businesses to do what they need to do to make their businesses succeed, because we know they have a lot of challenges in doing that. But at the same point, I don't think we should completely lose sight of the fact that I think our streetscape overall is a little more attractive than it used to be. So I think compromise is always a good place to look at these types of things, but reasonable compromise.
I think the sign law, as George has said, has done some good things streetscape-wise. I do think it needs to be reviewed and it needs to be revised. There are things that need to go. But instead of writing and rewriting the sign bylaw in a vacuum, we need to sit down with the business community and the people most affected by it, get their input. What changes do they see? What does the business community need? Is this 10%, maximum signage on windows appropriate for all places? I don't think it is, and I see the stores that they're hurting from it. The remote signs that used to be right out here, I'm looking over at Walmart, that were at the Walmart entrance that showed everybody where all the number of restaurants that were down on Route 30 on Caldwell Road. Those businesses have all been seriously hurt by removing of those signs. Aesthetically, they could have just been done more attractively and still allowed those people to get their customers. I mean, they had signed long-term leases that they were obligated for, and then their signage came down. Their leases, their rent didn't go down in that habit. We need to have some common sense, and when we're looking at things that affect any specific constituency, they need to be involved in the process. It can't be done, in a closed room, and with people who even have no clue about what the business is, and arbitrarily setting standards. We need to include the constituency that counts. We need to look for the overall benefit to Framingham, because Framingham, as a community as a whole, has to be the driving factor behind any decision we make. But we can combine all of Framingham's good and individual business good and reach the best for both. And if we don't find that compromise place that is best for both, whatever we do, we're going to fail.
Okay, now we're going to move on to what we're calling the lightning round, so that.
Are we going to be struck by lightning?
No, it's just we're going to have to tell us your position in 30 seconds. The first question is, what is your position on recreational marijuana, and should the city add any regulations such as where they should be located if you believe it should come to town, these businesses?
I'm generally, I'll state this up front, I'm not a marijuana user, but I am generally in favor of recreational marijuana being accepted as it is now. I think we do need to regulate it with reasonable regulation like we do all zoning, but I'm not particularly interested beyond that in the town getting too involved in the issue.
I think because we approved 2 medical marijuana establishments, we, under the new regulations, which of course happened after that, are required to allow at least 2, if not more, unless the voters make a decision. So the initial city council is going to have to make a decision on whether or not to put that on the ballot to restrict the number. My concern would be if we have too many recreational establishments, we're going to oversaturate the market, businesses are going to fail, and when businesses are failing, they cut corners, and that can become a public health hazard.
So, disclosure, I'm not a marijuana user either.
Oh yeah, how about that me?
However, recreational marijuana, the voters spoke, and going through the last round of medical marijuana with the planning board and getting shot down on any zoning regulations, I would be hesitant to provide any regulations or even bring that up, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a large amount of pushback on it, and I don't have much to say other than that on that subject.
If you hang on to the mic, I'll speak loud. We're going over the vices now, I guess. What is your position on unlimited liquor licenses?
Okay, unlimited liquor license, although there's a lot of talk about whether, I think that's regulated by the state, you can only have so many, but I think that in many cases it hurts business if they're not allowed to have a liquor license. So to limit how many you can give out within a community for as far as businesses goes, I would like to see that lifted so that more businesses can operate with that ability. So I'll give you the 15 seconds.
I would the budget state quite strictly, and I also agree that I do not think that it should be limited. I think the free market, I mean, I think you should have to have the responsibility, like any other business, how you get the license. You have to prove that you're responsible enough to get the license and you're solid enough to get the license. But beyond that, I don't believe it's a government interest to be regulating the total number.
I think right now the state is looking at it, which I think is why you're asking the question. The emphasis of what they're looking at is restaurants. And I think that is really critical for Framingham, that right now we have not capped out our restaurant licenses. I mean, years ago we had. It happened. If we get the economic development we're hoping for, we will cap out, and that will stunt us. As far as more package store and beer and wine licenses, I We've got quite a few. I don't necessarily know we need any more of those, but I know we absolutely need to have flexibility on restaurants as we've got.
Last question. Framingham has had a reputation for being a difficult community for getting permitting for projects, which has recently changed. What's your plan to keep this momentum going, or should it be going, continue?
Absolutely, should continue to go in that direction, and the plan is to continue to correct zoning, and what I would like to see going forward with the mayor and with the council is to, when it comes to appointments, to have a person just in charge to do all of the permitting. So the planning board, the zoning board, all of the permitting agencies would have one administrator over that, making sure that that permit process actually flows much better than it does. I used to think it was just the planning board that was the problem, but there still is a disconnect in the permitting process, and that needs to be addressed. And also the fee schedules and the costs associated with that need to be greatly looked at and maybe reduced. Oh, okay, I'm not sure.
I agree with what Christina said regarding construction permits, and I will just add to that, we also have a lot of other permits that we offer, restaurant permits, liquor licenses, common vicular permits. That process has become more arduous than it needs to be. We should be having common forms that go from department to department. We should not have people having to fill out multiple things over and over again. We have a lot of ethnic people who are coming in for ethnic businesses who have a hard time with our paperwork. We should be offering them assistance to make it easier for them to open a business.
Amen to that.
I'm not sure I totally agree with the premise of the question that it's better now than it used to be. It's always been challenging. I'm not sure it is much better. I've seen some issues in the last year that make it kind of concerning, actually. So we'll have to see if that's the case. But I do think the city government will give us the opportunity. I don't think it will automatically make it much better, but I think it will give us the opportunity to put in a system that will allow for efficiency and control a process that is responsive to the needs of people, and also, at the same point, keep it in the reasonable expectations of the community as a whole.
Okay, so everybody will get a minute now, or did you finish?
No, I'm
sorry.
just saying who gets this anymore. Whose turn is it?
Not even close or something.
Yes, so each of you can now get 2 minutes to make your pitch. Say
Okay, so on November 7th, we have a very historic vote for the first time in many years. I've been involved in the Charter Commission year after year after year over a few decades. And we finally have become, or will become, a city. Technically, I think we already are. So November 7th, I would love to be able to use my expertise, my skills, my knowledge, and everything I bring to the table between my municipal experience for volunteering in Framingham and Public Works, Zoning Board, Government Study, various array of different committees, including the last decade on the Planning Board as an elected board member, and my other municipal experience as a capital improvement coordinator, facility manager, project manager for the Newton Housing Authority, and tenant coordinator and all the other things I do. So community outreach is one of my big assets that I bring to the table, besides the fact that I do have a lot of business experience as a former business owner of several different businesses, and the last one being in construction. So I know about a lot of issues in Framingham. I've had the experience on both business side, private side, public side. I am responsible for the budget where I work. I'm responsible for my home budget in my home, and I would love to see the taxes be addressed, because that seems to be the biggest issue I hear from people running around town. It's taxes, 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 traffic, and the quality of life, and improving the amenities that we have and reducing the blight. So I would love the chance to bring all my skill set to the table, and I would be your independent voice that would represent you, as I represent everybody now on the planning board, across the board, across Framingham. Whoops, 0. So vote for me on November 7th, please.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone this morning. I've enjoyed the opportunity over the last few months to run for city council. It's interesting when people are willing to sit around and listen to what you think about town government, when your opinions are really no more or less valid than anyone else's opinions. But I want to bring them forward as a member of the city council. I hope to have that opportunity. I think I'm well qualified to do it. I've had the opportunity to be the town manager in Framingham from 1999 to 2005. That gave me a great insight as to how the community works and some of the issues and some of the challenges it has. Also the opportunity over the last 10 years or so not to be very involved at all with Framingham's government. In that period of time, to sit back, reflect, and let other people do things and see how things go, I think is a valuable opportunity too. So I'd like to take those two opportunities and put them together. I'd like to use my experience and my knowledge of the government across the town I've had to reflect upon it to help us in our fledgling city as we continue to transform. It's going to be a challenging time, there's no question about that. It's not going to be perfect as day one. I think that some of the opportunities, I can bring some opportunities forward to help the city council go forward in managing this city. I'm cognizant of the fact that we are the city council and we will not be the executive. And I think that's one of the things that's important. We have to understand the role. And I hope to work with whoever gets elected mayor to make us the most successful community as we possibly can. So I'm very interested in focusing on things like taxes that we've talked a lot about today, I heard a lot about today. I'm very concerned about that situation. I think our tax rate, actual dollar tax rate, I'm not even talking about the tax bill, the tax rate is too high, and that's a concern. And those are the types of things that are complicated, and they need expertise that I think that I can help bring to the city council. So I appreciate the opportunity again, and thank you for your attention today.
I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this great opportunity. Framingham will not reach our potential without a thriving business climate. We've got to remove the hurdles, we've got to remove the obstacles and the red tape. We have a much higher commercial tax rate than those around us, and we've got to figure out what we're going to give back to deserve that. We've got location, infrastructure, and a trained workforce, but there's still a lot more we need to do. First thing we need to do is we need to listen to you. On that front, I plan on establishing a small business roundtable to advise me and others in our government on the needs that our businesses have that we can better meet. And do it on an ongoing basis, not, we'll sit down and, forget about it and we'll deal with it 3 years from then as a crisis. Something we have ongoing communication. The world is changing rapidly. People's businesses have to change that rapidly. And if our government doesn't change at the same speed to help them, we're not going to be as effective as we should be. We also need to have a better understanding of what our larger employers need to keep growing. What type of workforce training do they need? What are employee housing needs? And how can we improve our transportation system that will work in a way that suits them and gets the workers they need to their locations? We're running a $300 million service business, and customer service needs to be number one. We need to run it like a business. When somebody calls and needs something, they should get a response, and if they don't get a response at the time, somebody should get back to them with an answer. They're our customer. You're our customer. It's just because we don't have to sell our services to you, because unfortunately we're all hostage to all of the government, federal, state, and local. We're still responsible for providing those answers and providing the level of services that you need to run your businesses and live your lives. So I thank you for this opportunity today and ask for one of your 2 votes for Council at Large on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, good to hear from everybody.